Yo, hello, we're back with another week of metagame analysis. We've had a lot of events this weekend. Most notably, there's 3 different Japanese Grassroot tournaments. There were a few online locals as well, but most importantly, there was the San Diego Regional Championships that happened this last weekend. We had a lot of big results from there that we'll go over soon. And really, there's a lot to talk about in general. There's a lot of teams, a lot of big meta developments, and a couple like big announcements for the future of Series 1 too. Because most notably, it has been confirmed recently that we'll be getting a new format with the Series 2 metagame with Paradox Pokemon coming back. And with that, it has also recently been confirmed that San Diego will be the only event to take place under Series 1. And we'll have Orlando and every event on February under Series 2. There's still Liverpool for Europe, but for the sakes of North America, Series 1 is already a done format, which in some case is a little unfortunate, is a tad unfortunate in some degree. And we'll begin to see some Series 2 Grassroot tournaments online happening as well. So with these videos in the future, there's going to be like a split for the coming weeks up until Liverpool, where I just stopped doing Series 1. But up until Liverpool Regionals, I'll do like each week there will be a Series 1 video, and there will be a Series 2 video covering whatever Series 2 tournament happens to happen. Which there will be a few, as we all know how when they announce the format early, we always get a bit of a split for that time, where there's some tournaments that are Series 1 for the sake of the European Regionals in Liverpool, and there's some tournaments that will be Series 2 for the sakes of the tournament in Orlando on like February 3rd for OCIC. That will also presumably be Series 2. So that's a pretty important thing I want to keep you guys updated on. But to talk about the first event, really, this happened a bit before Orlando. I mean, a bit before San Diego, and we were able to see like some interesting meta developments that ultimately had some importance. Like notably, you notice a lot of Dragonites here. The Dragonites actually chose to be TERA flying over TERA normal, and this allowed them to take advantage of Dragonite in a way that's not really common. Some Dragonites didn't even run like any stab moves altogether, and just like focus on, oh yeah, I'm just going to TERA normal, I'm going to E-speed, I'm going to go for kills. And instead, this Dragonites, and a lot of these Dragonites in this tournament, chose to be TERA flying, and that's very important as TERA Flying, TERA Blast is a very, very powerful move off of Double Stab and Choice Band. So essentially, Dragonite, well, you wouldn't expect to be getting like natural OHKOs so easily, because like TERA Normal E-Speed, while powerful, without the help of Pokemon like Chien-Pao, or without like a helping hand, you're not going to get like straight up OHKOs with TERA Normal E-Speed too typically. Though it's an excellent move to like clean up Pokemon from like 80%, which is kind of insane on its own. But with like TERA Flying, they were able to like really just take over in a different way with TERA Blast, Choice Band, and Pure Power. And we're also able to see another set where they were using like Hurricane, Dragonite, and Rain, where they took advantage of Dragonite's bulk instead of like Dragonite's pure aggressive offensive power, where they use like Hurricane, Tailwind, Roost, they had multi-scale, and then this kind of like use that bulk to really power through another team. And importantly, we also see the first place team putting a little bit of an interesting development on their own, with Hiroshi using Palafin, Weak Armor, Armorogue, and some very interesting sets as well, as we'll get into now. As you see here, this is the team that ultimately won the TERA Challenge, where essentially they had 2 ways to proc Armorogue. If you don't Terastallize, well, I guess 3, because you can proc with EQ, but if you don't choose to Terastallize early, you can bring Palafin plus Armorogue, flip, turn off your Armorogue, and then you proc the Weakness Policy, proc the Weak Armor, then go into your NDD and go for Expanding Force. And then if you don't choose to do that, you also have Sylveon to self-proc with Quick Attack onto Terastallized Dark Armorogue. So essentially we have multiple ways to get that TERA proc going, and that's a very cool utilization that can really just take over a game. And also another thing I wanted to talk about is Salamence. Salamence is a Pokemon that has a unique niche in this being faster than Hydreigon at base, having a base flying typing it's pretty important how like valuable the flying typing can be offensively into the into this meta. As you can see, there's Pokemon like Annihilate, there's Pokemon like, more importantly, Amoonguss. There are a lot of Pokemon choosing to like go TERA Grass in itself, and then Salamence can answer that a bit better. There's Pokemon like Tauros. There's a lot of Pokemon that having base flying stab is good to hit, so Salamence can take advantage of that way. And importantly, this team chooses to use TERA Steel on both of his dragons to kind of fill out the Fairy Dragon Steel core in a different way, because like, and it's one of the cool utilizations of the terrestrialization where you don't exactly have to like have the typing on your team to fill out the type core. And this was a cool utilization of that sense too. Ultimately in the tournament, they did not bring Palafin much at all. I frankly don't think they ever brought Palafin on stream. That we watched on our Twitch channel a little bit as well, and we weren't able to quite see the power of that Palafin show off, but we were able to see them like use that combo of weak armor, weakness policy, and really take advantage of like Salamence and Sylveon. Another interesting development as well is something we like went on a bit last week with the Glimmora, Dondozo, and the TERA Flying Dragonite, like sets like that being pretty important and valuable in their own right too. And we also see Golden Flare use a team here. We focus on Skeleturge in Grimmsnarl. Notably, like a lot of the Skeleturge teams kind of like didn't fully commit to Skeleturge as their setup win con. Instead had like Skeleturge plus Annihilate, Skeleturge plus some other Pokemon. But this team most notably has like Grimm, Garchomp, Gyarados, all these other setup ons, and Skeleturge is like really the bulky win condition in a lot of senses, because you do this Torch Song, Torch Song, Torch Song, and that's a bit different than some of the other teams that use like Grimm, Annihilate, for example, to really get some power going. And then we also see another team with the Palafin, which this one is this Palafin plus TERA Flying Dragonite, go power, go in, and that was another decent example. And then we see Arubega with Grimm, Sylveon, Garchomp, Volcarona, Dragonite, and Rotom-Wasp. Oh, and also the Floatzel Choice Band with TERA Ghost was something I think I should probably point out too. And Golduck, Dragonite, Kingambit, Sylveon, Pelipper, a very committed rain team to all of the rain mode, and it just has like the pure bulk of like Dragonite as we talked about earlier too. So there's just a lot of options to really this kind of pull itself off really. And then to get into the really big event this weekend, if there's any more important event to talk about, it's this. It's the San Diego Regional Championships. And we were provided the slides by VGC Paste on Twitter. So we have all this little information here. And also we get to see like Golden being really the premier Pokemon with 19 usage. And really like the key things from this is the popularity of Kingambit and the popularity of like Tauros and Pelipper. I think are like the big shocks from this. Mimikyu as well, having a lot of usage is pretty cool. And like the fairly low usage of Dondozo Tatsugiri, which kind of makes sense in some degree. I feel like Dondozo Tatsugiri was definitely like one of the teams to potentially win. But I don't feel like a lot of people felt comfortable using Dozo Tatsugiri throughout Swiss, or they weren't quite prepared in the right way with it. I feel like as let's look at like all the Dozo Tatsugiri teams in Top Cut. You look at Zach Carlson, number 23, with the Palma Meowscarada Talonflame. You look at Melios with the Glimmora Meowscarada Sylveon Talon. And then you look at like Chuppas. Like all of these Dozo teams play this like very offensive core around them. And those are the ones that perform best, right? Like Kyle has the TERA Flying Dragonite we talked about from the TERA Run tournament as well. And like there's a lot of like interesting stuff like that that really helps makes Dozo play a lot more comfortably. It's like we can just look at some of these Dozo teams, right? Emilio ultimately was the 10-0 going to the Top Cut. And you just look at his team. He has TERA Ghost, playing with Covert Cloak. Yeah, the Life Orb Meowscarada, the Sylveon with Throat Spray, Choice Specs on Glimmora. Like that's a lot of pure offensive prowess that's available there, which makes it very interesting, right? When we look at Chuppa having Palmut, Revival, which I think is a very bit underrated tactic with these kind of teams. And he also has the Life Orb Meowscarada, the Choice Band Meowscarada, Life Orb Golden Go, and the Assault Vest Arcanine. And then we look at like Zach, Carlson. Like all. Oh. Wait, let me check. Yeah, okay. I did have it right. But yeah, then we get the Talon, you get the Choice Band Meowscarada, Palmut, Golden Goat, Life Orb. Okay, that's a lot of offensive prowess there, right? And then we can look at like Kyle. And this one with the TERA, Flying, Choice Band Dragonite. Overall, there's like a lot of great offensive prowess that's just together on these teams. And that's something that's like fairly important to how these like comps kind of play, is having that offensive option to really like get their stuff going. Notably also running Toxic Spikes, which can show as a bit of an answer to opposing Dozo, which is what we saw from like the top of the ladder in our previous video where we just talked about the top VGC ranked ladder teams, and that was like a very notable team from the rank 1 team where they used Toxic Spike Meowscarada to act as kind of like a individual check to opposing Dozo matchups, and thus having like ability to help your Dozo thus act as a stall win con a bit easier, because Dozo doesn't necessarily get clean at Okos even with like the boost. Then we just go down a bit. And the other notable thing was the uses of Tauros on a lot of these cores. Because like Tauros kind of allowed a lot of these teams to have like some very powerful ways to this go through. Cause I think I talked about this before, but Tauros really this has like all the use Arcanine does, but with a interesting like water fighting typing, which is just very good offensively in this meta. Like you have Pokemon like Hydreigon, Volcarona, Talon, all these fire types, all these Pokemon that want to terrestrialize into Steel, all the Pokemon that are choosing not to run Clear Amulet anymore, creates like a lot of good scenarios for Paldea Tauros. And Water Tauros in particular helps you against like Dondozo to a degree, because a Pokemon that can actually like kind of switch in on Dozo and once it's Terra Flying. So you can like intimidate, rotate, intimidate, rotate, intimidate, rotate, and then eventually Dozo's going to do like not as much damage anymore. And also this helps like this in general, this having very good offensive prowess. Like water fighting is a type that's very hard to really this deal with in general. Like the only mons that I think can really just get through it are mons like Gyarados, Salamence. And those Pokemon, while Salamence did have a degree of like popping up a fair bit more, it wasn't like common enough where Paldea Tauros necessarily suffered from it. And even if it was, Paldea Tauros can still like intimidate it, so it's like it's not as bad as it could be, you know. And there's Pokemon like Dragonite that would sometimes have to like think twice of like going Terra normal, and only the Terra Flying set would be a bit more scary. There's stuff like that that has a bit of a interesting function to it as well. And yeah, there's some interesting Pokemon on the top cut. We see like Breloom, Arboliva on like a hard Trick Room team, Abomasnow Titan from old James Evans, my goat, my legend, the Sabas. We see Dreadnought, Ferrogiraffe. I will actually talk about Ferrogiraffe, because I think this is a Pokemon that you should keep in mind for Series 2 very extensively, because Trick Room cores will be getting a lot stronger, and the importance of getting rid of priority moves is a lot more valuable when you get into Pokemon like Flutter Mane, where the best way to deal with them sometimes is just going for like a Bullet Punch. And also, Scizor becomes a bit more interesting with Flutter Mane in the meta too, as it's something that can this Bullet Punch KO, right? And Ferrogiraffe having the ability to stop priority really will show its head a bit more once we get into that metagame. And this is the importance of this, the value of Trick Room, because we'll have a few better Trick Room Pokemon like Brute Bonnet, for example, the Paradoxmon, and like Iron Hands. Both of those Pokemon are really great partners for Ferrogiraffe. And I believe Brute Bonnet, Ferrogiraffe will be a core that you can slap on a lot more teams than you would expect. Like Brute Bonnet, Torkoal, Ferrogiraffe, I think can slap on a lot of teams. Or alternatively, Iron Hands, Torkoal, Ferrogiraffe. I think those are like 3-mon cores that you can slap on even like Tailwind comps and be kind of fine. Because like Flutter Mane, for example, and a lot of the Photosynthesis mons benefit so highly from the existence of a Torkoal that the slapping them on like teams and swapping on like Fair Draft Torkoal is like a lot more doable than you may think, and that's something that's pretty valuable to point out, I believe. We also see Sableye. With Sableye is something we talked about last week. It's notably running an Encore Disable Reflect Light Screen set, essentially acting as a Grimmsnarl, but with in a Sableye's body, which is important because Sableye has a Ghost type, so it's immune to Fake Out, but more importantly, it's not weak to Golden Go. And this is really what makes that Sableye set really more viable than Grimm in some sense. Is this how popular Golden Go is? So this having him on this is now weak to it, be your screen setter, is just like a little bit more viable in some sense. As you can see, Golden Go is 19 Pokemon, 59% of top cut. So this having him on like Sableye, where it's just not weak to it, is kind of valuable in its own right. And you also have moves like Encore and Disable to disrupt too. Like the Sableye is a very interesting Pokemon, because we notably saw a lot of Grimmsnarls running sets where they were essentially just not really taking the craziest advantage of their Prankster utility, because instead they chose to be like Reflect, Light Screen, Spear Break, Taunt. While Taunt's a good move, it didn't necessarily disrupt in the same way Encore and like Disable can. So it's pretty cool to see that from Ryan overall. And really that's some of the cool aspects of that. And you see the top 16 there, and the top 8. Well, let's go over all the top 8 teams actually, because we can. And we already looked at Emilio and Chuppas as the 2 Dozo players. Let's look at Pukilar Bear. Oh, Giovanni. I typed it wrong. Why did I type Q? But yeah, Giovanni. And their team is similar to the team that you'll actually see in first place of this tour, but they have a few different sets here, right? They have the Meowscarada with the Flower Trick Knockoff Sucker with Sash, the Mimikyu with Life Orb, 3 attacks, the Gargo with Salt Cure, Wide Guard, Recover, the Golden Go with the Specs, Make It Rain, Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt Trick, the Mystic Water, Water Tauros, and notably TERA Fire on Baxcalibur, acting as a bit of a Pseudo Fire type, and of course, like, importantly, resisting fire moves, think the Thermal Exchange, which is pretty nice. We also see Aaron Brock having a very interesting core, where they have Farigiraf, Meowscarada, and this is really like kind of the concept that I am talking about for Series 2, though it's doing it in a very different way with Rain, right? It's just using Farigiraf as a Trick Room on what is like otherwise a pretty offensive core, right? Because they have the Swift Swim user in Dreadnought, they have the pretty fast offensive Pokemon in Meowscarada, they have Pelipper that can like set Tailwind too. And I think this is like a concept that will like prove very well off in Series 2, is the ability to like stick Farigiraf in a Trick Room mode onto formerly like very offensive comp. So congrats to Aaron there, and I think this is something that's like has more staying power than you may expect. I don't expect like the same Pokemon to be popular in this sense. I do think like Pokemon like Iron Bundle, for example, kind of like feast on the Meowscarada, Pelipper, and like the Dreadnought, for example. But I think overall, I think this is a core to really concept to really watch out for, not so much the core itself. I think that's something that you should expect to potentially see a bit more as a concept in this Farigiraf in general. And then we'll go to Giovanni Costa. And they used a pretty interesting team, I think. Like, I think if you look at this team on preview, you kind of think it would be like Water Tauros. But no, it's this Fire Tauros, which kind of surprised me looking at it. I thought for sure this would be a Water Tauros team. But no, they just decided like the fire damage was more valuable, which kind of makes sense in a meta with so many Golden Go. And like, just having that extra weight of this punish Golden Go, so your Firemons get through the Golden Go, then your Dragonite can tear up everything with E-Speed, and also it helps conserve your trap better to remove Golden Go. So it does make sense in a lot of ways. And then they have Fake Out, Hypnosis, Heal Pulse, Helping Hand, and the Goth. Overall, a pretty cool team. I do think a lot of the power And I do actually have another thing I want to talk about. This is the Mirror Herb on the Tauros Paldea. This kind of allows you to make some interesting plays where, like, notably if you have your Paldea Tauros and then your opponent has an Annihilate or a King Gambit, you can lead your Intimidate Mon onto the King Gambit or the Annihilate, and then you'll be getting a +1 boost off of their Defiant thanks to your Mirror Herb. And that's a very cool way to, like, take advantage of Mirror Herb overall. Also, notably, you can, like, proc off of, like, Dondozo too, which is pretty cool. Always a very viable option in that sense, though. In this case, is more so for this Defiant Mon, so King Gambit and stuff can't really lead too comfortably into you. Even less so, because you're, like, the fighting typing, you know? But not even Terrasilize can save you from the +1 bowl. And then notably we got Jiziok, Lee, and James Evans. Jiziok chose some very interesting options overall with the TERA Poison on Garganacle. And TERA Poison is something that I think it was always, like, kind of not given the credit it should have been. Because let's look at the type weaknesses Poison has defensively. Psychic and Ground. The only Psychic Pokemon in this metagame are Armorogue and Indeedee. And those are usually only ran together and aren't the most common this overall anymore. Because Size Spam really took, like, a massive hit from the overall popularity of mons like Hydreigon. So going TERA Poison was, like, in general already a very good option in itself. And it's a typing that's just not generally used as much. Of course, you do keep the ground weakness still, but, like, the main ground type in this metagame tends to only run Earthquake, which means that you can just wide guard through most of their damage anyways and put them in a little bit of a guessing game. So it's still, like, Garganacle has a bit of an advantage in a 1v1 versus Garchomp, if it were to come down to it in some senses. And you also have, like, a mon like Baxcalibur too that can help pick off Garchomp and clear up your TERA Poison. You also have the Meowscarada to clear up Psychic types a bit better with the Sash as well, so you have more options where you throw off your moves. And notably running the 3-attack Protect Mimikyu as well, similar to what we saw Giovanni run. And this is a very cool set to see in general, get decent results. And yeah, the final team we'll look at it from this event is this James Evans team. And I'll have the link to this file in the description as well. But with James Evans, we just see the Scarf Hydreigon, the Titan, the Abomasnow, the Tauros with the Mirror Herb, the Gothitelle, and Rotom Heat. Most notably, the thing I really want to talk about is this, once again, we see the Mirror Herb pop up, but the most important thing I think is where you, like, the Scarf on Hydreigon. What this essentially allows you to do is kind of catch other Hydreigons in, like, some very bad positions, and, like, Pokemon like Salamence in bad positions too. As normally they would expect to have, like, a bit more of an advantage into this kind of team, because, like, sure, you're playing the speed tie game, but, like, a Steel Hydreigon or, like, a Fire Hydreigon, they just always instantly Terrasilize their Hydreigon, and then they have a good advantage against, like, Gothitelle, Hydreigon, Abomasnow. Like, a lot of those mons don't like Terrafire Hydreigon, so having your Hydreigon be faster, 100% guaranteed, kind of gives you a bit of a fundamental damage guarantee. So, like, you won't just lose your Hydreigon turn 1 to an opposing Draco Meteor, and you'll just be able to do, like, more damage through that. And also it helps a bit versus, like, Scarf Golden Go and any set that tries to be, like, annoying in that sense. So it kind of gives you a decent degree of options to really just help you out and get this general damage output, right? And yeah, that's really the most we want to talk about here. And we'll ultimately see as we go the top 4, Aaron over Geo, and then Jiziok, Aaron top 4, Chuppa versus Judy top 4 as well. And then finally we saw Chuppa versus Jiziok in the finals, and Jiziok ultimately takes it home. And the full VODs were on the Pokemon YouTube channel, which we'll link in the description. So if any of you guys are interested in watching the whole tournament, you can watch it there. Unfortunately, we weren't able to finish our watch party stream because of some like little technical difficulties, but we still have some of the information here, so you know, pretty cool to just go over regardless. But yeah, we'll have all the VODs from everything we talk about. All the links that I go through are always going to be in the description if you ever need them, and some of the resources we go over. And yeah, notably the VOD here, some stuff there too, like pretty cool overall. But yeah, some of the rentals, got Zach Carlson posted the rental, notably taking advantage of some like pretty interesting sets. Covert Cloak to be immune to fake out, on Talonflame guarantee Tailwind for Golden Go, and have some like additional paralysis with Palmut and Meowth Grotto. And then we see the also notably the pretty cool team that we saw with Metacham in the top cut, where they took advantage of a few interesting options, right? The TERA flying on Gyarados with goggles. They have the Focus Energy Scope Lens Hydreigon, which was something that popped up in a Japan tournament not too long ago. And they also have Metacham, a Pokemon that really just hasn't seen much play at all, but is still notably a fighting type. And it also gives you like rarely seen psychic coverage too. The Pure Power ability makes you fairly strong as a hit, and you also have Trick Room and access to Fake Out. So it is a pretty threatening mon in its own right too, and it's a pretty cool team to see get top cut. Ultimately, we see the King Gambit with the Water type Terra Blast AV. Notably, King Gambit is very bulky and very annoying, and Water Terra is one of the more annoying defensive Terras in the metagame. So to see that on King Gambit, it's just generally hard to deal with because of this King Gambit's very high defensive stats and very high attacking stats. So it's a bit scary in its own right. And then the Dark Terra on Amoonguss with the Rocky Helmet. And we get the full pace here. And yeah. We also had the team from B Smithy that used Amoonguss, Talonflame, Garchomp, Grim, Rotom, and Golden Go. Basically, it kind of bluffs this way as like a very offensive Tailwind team where you just have Talonflame, Garchomp, Rotom, Wash, and Golden Go. But it can also like pull it back a bit and play this like slower, you're not going to break my Golden Go game with Grimmsnarl, which I think is very interesting and something that's like not really seen as a concept with Golden Go. Normally you see mods like Annihilate and Skeleturge, for example, is what we talked about in the Japan tournament. And also notable to talk about, there weren't really many Annihilate concepts, and big parts thanks to this like the rise of Tauros. Tauros, thanks to its exclusive move Raging Bull, kind of just has a inherent advantage against any Grim Annihilate comp. And as we see, like the Annihilate there is from Joshua Lorsey with Mousehold as a partner instead, and like Annihilate in general is not as used in the more sets that are there are ones like that are Choice Scarf and Final Gambit instead of being like self-set up in its own right. So it's a very interesting development to see this like Annihilate this get completely, the bulky screens plus Grim Annihilate this get destroyed by Tauros. I think it's a welcome one at that, a welcome one for sure. And yeah, that's like that's a pretty cool meta development. And yeah, so seeing Grim Golden Go as a little aggro option, and we also see Sash Garchomp, which I think is one of the better sets on Garchomp in general, because like Sash Garchomp, it kind of allows you to play like a little more greedy with your Garchomp, where you don't necessarily have to go for these trades, right? And you don't have to like force your target out of fear of being OHKO'd by another dragon. So that's a very cool option in its own right. And we also see Terra Blast, which pretty strong option in its own right to hit Amoonguss if you do choose to Terrasilize. And then we'll get into another Japan tournament with some interesting results as well, as we see once again kind of Armrogue and DD concept winning in Japan. And we also see like the Dendozo Tatsu, Dragonite, Volk, Glamora. And this is another tournament that really just like shows the rise of Dragonite in these kind of dozo concepts. Like it's Terraflying Dragonite, Terraflying Dragonite, Terraflying Dragonite, and then you see all these Dragonites back to back to back to back in the 2nd to 4 and 4 seeds. So cool to see this kind of like Dragon Ball comp ultimately like take advantage of that. And we also see the team that won the tournament we went over a bit before, with the Palafin Armorogue comp showing up there too. But I do really like seeing this, the Dragapult Annihilate kind of King Gambit core. This is a general pretty interesting concept in its own right. And we'll see if we actually have the pace for it. I think we do. Yeah, we do. But yeah, the Choice Scarf Final Gambit. It's very interesting set, some very like offensive prowess in like ways I honestly I kind of assumed it was Final Gambit Dragapult, but I mean Annihilate, but I never assumed it was like Sash Dragapult. So overall, very interesting sets from Naruto, and congrats to them for winning that tournament. So yeah, overall, very cool team to see win. And finally, we had the TERA square off, where we were able to see this time the Dondozo Tatsu Glamora stuff actually got the victory. And once again, we're seeing these Dondozo Tatsu teams choose to run Dragonite this across the board. This Dragonite. And I think that's something to keep in mind for Liverpool potentially. I really would be surprised if we don't see like more of these concepts, as we saw with like Kyle Ayaya during this tournament, where they had the Dragonite plus Donzo Tatsu. I think they were really the only US player to really take that meta adaptation even a little bit. Emilio Forbes notably having the Glamora part of it, but not the Dragonite part. So this is something important to keep in mind that I think is going to be very important to the future of the metagame. And also another thing I want to talk about is like this Houndstone team that I find like fundamentally like very interesting, right? Like the Houndstone, Tyranitar, Meowscarada, Murkrow, Volk, Palmet. Most notably, this team has the ability to like kind of surprise you in some ways, because like you can revival blessing something so that Mon can faint too, so your Houndstone will do even more damage. So it ultimately is like a very interesting concept, right? In general, it's having like fairly strong offensive mons too. Like Tyranitar is pretty anti a lot of the stuff in the meta, like with its natural special bulk and this rock dark typing it can work out pretty well in some senses on its own right, and you didn't need this have like one of the really the best offensive Pokemon in this metagame, Meowscarada. And it's all supportive Volcarona, and you have Murkrow as well. A pretty cool concept with like revival blessing and like showing it off with a pretty interesting way. Unfortunately, we do not have the pace on that though, so there's not too much more I can go over in that sense. We also see a Baxcalibur, another like Golden Go Grim kind of screens team as well. This one with like Tauros, so that's pretty cool to see as well. And yeah, pretty cool stuff. And yeah, now we'll go over some like grassroots tournaments that happened as well. Notably the Flareon Cup, which had some interesting results, as we see like Kamikaze with the Kilowattrel, Tauros, Hydreigon stuff. We see Tyranitar Lycanroc win, but separated from Dondozo Tatsugiri. Notably, the main way this team was performing before was thanks to having itself be next to Dondozo Tatsu, so having it be separated and still get that result is pretty cool. And we can just look over the team this way, and yeah, you see the Assault Vest Tyranitar. It was kind of performing a similar kind of light to how the previous teams were running with the Dozo Tatsu stuff, where you have the Endeavor, Lycanroc, plus the Tyranitar, and you kind of go in like that. But notably, this one just doesn't have the Dozo Tatsu mode, and it has some funny sets like Bright Powder, Garchomp with Substitute. Plus Bright Powder, if Garchomp's faster than your opponent, you force them to hit you more times potentially if you get a free sub up, because they would have to hit you in your sub while you have the Bright Powder Sound Bell, and then hit you again. So like it can be pretty funny like that too. All right, so it's a pretty cool team to see. And we also see TERA steal Sylveon with Choice Specs, which is pretty cool overall. And other than that, I kind of want to check what these Dragonites are. Someone's Silk Scarf TERA normal, and is this the TERA flying one? No, they both didn't choose to use TERA flying yet, unfortunately. I kind of wanted to see if anyone else was like going on to the Japan meta this week. I'll look at the Kilowattrel team as well. Yeah, overall pretty interesting stuff. Notably choosing the Fire Tauros. Fire Tauros is in some ways better than Arcanine, thanks to firefighting typing and the ability to do more damage with his close combat than Arcanine could dream of. So it's a pretty good alternative. And also to see the Kilowattrel with the wind power. wind power, of course, acts like charge. So if you set Tailwind, you do double damage with your T-Bolt, or if Tailwind was set against you. So overall, pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. And then the final tournament we'll talk about is the Little Root Lessons Rumble, where we get into like Pelipper, Dreadnought, Arcanine, Serena, Golden Go, Murkrow as the team that ultimately wins. Basically this rain hyper offense. And then we start to see some pretty cool stuff with this one actually choosing to use the TERA Flying Dragonite, and it gets to second place as well, which is it's nice to see, And yeah, overall, once again, the Tyranitar Lycanroc stuff that we saw earlier with, and then we see the Trick Room, Coral Fair, Giraffe, Torkoal. Some interesting concepts at the top of this tournament for sure. For sure. And yeah, to go over some tournaments that are happening on the next weekend. As I said, Series 2 is really like the thing that's on the forefront of everyone's mind right now. So there will be a bit of a separation on what tournaments are which, right? Oh, yeah, Series 2 tomorrow from P-Roll Wooper Wednesday. Oh my god. Oh my god. I think I have been legally bribed to enter this tournament. God damn it. But yeah, there's gonna be like a few bit of separation here. Like this one's Series 1, this one's Series 1, this one's Series 2. So yeah, there's a bit of separation here. Like we get Series 2 on this tournament for Nino. This one's Series 1. And that's something to like keep in mind for the coming week. So a lot of these tournaments we won't have as much of a... Yeah, and there's another Series 2 tournament. Like there's a very big kind of split on what you would expect, and that's going to be something that's going to cause some like interesting developments in general. Is this how that's going to interact with the metagame for Liverpool, as some players will be focused on Series 2, some will be on Series 1. Will the Liverpool players be able to get as good practice for their regional and Series 1, or will they just go for teams that they are running weeks before and not really try to adapt and to say, yeah, I can't get the same kind of practice, let's just go with this team that I know from weeks before and play it like that. So there's a lot of like interesting dynamics to think about going to this next few weeks of how this new like announcement for Series 2 will interact, and also with NA, how many NA players will actually choose to play Series 1 still when Series 2 is happening for Orlando, which is having registration today. So there's a lot of like interesting developments in that sense. So it'll be very cool and interesting to see how like all that kind of works out, right? And yeah, you know, I kind of have to register for this one, kind of have to. That's the last thing we'll do. It really just called it Wooper Wednesday. This to force me to enter, which is kind of crazy. Kind of crazy. But yeah, let me know what you think like we should do with our plans for the next couple events in couple weeks, because there is going to be a big split, and that's something that we'll have to consider and like adjust for this series and like how we go about it. I do plan on this doing 2 separate videos each week and this going over every tournament, though I do know that there will be a bit of a problematic... I think there will be a bit of a lack of Series 1 tournaments for like EU players now that we're in this separation. I don't know if the quality will be as high as you could possibly want. But yeah, now I'll like start labeling these videos after this week. Like next week I'll label each video in the title. You'll see Series 2 in the title, you'll see like Series 1 in the title, and I'll go through things like that. So there will be 2 separate metagame analysis videos. I do imagine they will be shorter too, considering that we're looking at like 2 separate formats. This player base becomes split a bit, you know, so there shouldn't be as much to go over. But then again, with Series 2 being a new format, I might want to go over a lot of stuff anyways. So, you know, that's possible in its own right too. So yeah, that's a potentially interesting thing, right? That's a potentially interesting thing. we will be playing this tournament tomorrow, and I'll link the Series 2 tournaments. Will also be in the YouTube community section. I'll link them there too. And I'll try to find some Series 1 tournaments for you guys as well, and try to keep like a balance going for that. And yeah, that's it for this week. Thank you guys for watching. Later.